Everyone I know listens to podcasts. Anyone who's anyone has their own podcast. You could start your own show even if no one asks. It's easy to record yourself and act like an ass. Murder, sports and politics, histories or movies, heist or technology. There's an audience for everything. Yes, but who on earth will listen to Three Random Vatos read books?
So I'm gonna record.
I don't know, like if I need a new beer, can I just like do like a sign, and then you can just place it there?
Yeah, I think you pointed last time and that worked.
I know, but I didn't want to be rude, like, hey, another beer. But I don't. Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, we are recording, so whenever you're ready. Action!
All right, chapter 2 of the podcast, episode 2.
All right.
I'm Arturo.
I'm Robert, and this is Marcus. Great, off to a start.
Today we're reading part 2 of Isaac Asimov's The Foundation, or just Foundation. Part 2 is called The Encyclopedists, or Encyclopedists.
Yeah.
So, you fellas, what stuck out about chapter 1 of part 2?
What do we remember about last time?
All right, so which question am I answering first?
Go ahead.
Where did they leave off, right? They left off with
the mission that they're going to be sent to
They got back to the university,
right.
And then they're like, hold up, we're sending you away.
to like this.
Oh, you got 6 months, right?
Right. You gotta take it from here. You got it.
All right. So that's where we are. Go on.
Well, more to that, they're sent away to write this encyclopedia of their galaxy because the Empire will fall within the next 30 years. So that's their game plan. This is Hari Seldon's idea. Gal was in it, right? He was sent to that planet to fulfill, I guess, part of that.
Yeah.
Did you do a gal joke off air, or was it on air?
It was probably off air.
If it was off air, I demand you do it again.
Oh. I mean, it really wasn't a joke. It was more of an observation. If you were excited to see where, Gal's journey was going, this next part has 0% of it. Like,
Yeah, I think Gal is probably gone from the story. I think my predictions from last week were right in that every part we're going to be getting some different protagonists.
Yeah.
Okay, so you don't think it's going to be going back and forth?
I don't think so. I feel like they introduced too many characters here that they're going to do the same thing again.
Yeah, it kind of took me by surprise.
How would this, so far, we've read 2 parts, which are together like 15 chapters maybe. How would this be presented in like a movie? Would this be a movie? Would this be a series?
Just be a
short series?
If I could see it working well, I think it would work well like an episodic type of thing, like maybe like an HBO or something. But I mean, I guess maybe not HBO because there's really nothing too like, rated R about it.
Yeah.
It could really be like on anything.
This is actually, I mean, I guess I can maybe get into this later when it happens, but did you guys get the sense that this was like almost comedic? Like a lot of the scenarios were just like the way I pictured them were like Veep episodes, like that whole kind of humor. Like how everything is just so absurd, even at the very top.
Well, I think where like the absurdity hits its peak is like in chapter 3 when we get there with Lord Darwin.
Yeah, well,
is that the guy who kept on? What's going on with you guys?
But in part 1,
let's go to the chapter.
In part 1, we get the characters, new characters. Lewis, how did you guys pronounce Perenni?
Peren.
Oh, Peren.
Peren or Perenni? I was saying Perenni.
Okay.
But I guess either or. He's the Emperor's representative on Terminus, and he's working on the encyclopedia, and he's painted as this workaholic. All that matters is the encyclopedia. It's the main mission. Yeah. And then we get a counterpart to him, Salvar Hardin, and he's the mayor of Terminus, and they're discussing Anacreonion's revolt and how a new person has taken up king or title of king over there.
Yeah, so they're setting up like the politics of that time, right? So we're 5 years away from the first publication of the Encyclopedia Galactica, right? I'm gonna say a lot of
We're
this
50 years.
completely
It's 50
unsure.
years from the lot where we left off.
Yeah, 50 years from the last part.
Well, 45 years, right? Because they're 5 years away from
Oh, yeah.
the 50th year, which is when they're going to do
You
the
know,
thing. But they're getting ready to
ballpark
to
50
open
years.
the vault for the first time, which apparently happens before the actual 50th thing. So what's happened is the royal governor of the prefect of Anacreon has assumed the title as king. And that's like a political thing that happens nearby enough that completely changes the politics or the statehood even of Terminus. They say that with this, now they're completely cut off from like trade routes to Tranton or what is it?
Trantor.
Trantor, which is of course the center of the Imperial Galactic Force, whatever they're called. So this really puts into question like who
Who's in
really
charge?
owns Terminus right now.
Yeah, and then it's discussed in this part how the power on Terminus lies with Louis Perrenni and the board that he's on. It
Board
seems
of
like
trustees.
they're kind of,
Yeah,
the
so-
be all end all.
So they think they're completely like apolitical, right?
Yeah,
so this
they're like,
is
don't bring me into this. I have more important things to worry about. We're all good, fam. Like, the empire's who we have to answer to, not this one king that you speak of. It's all part of the plan, bro, is what they're telling them.
yeah, they're just like naive to the fact that politics affects them at all. They're thinking like this is beneath us. We work on like we're preparing the knowledge of the galaxy, but so we don't have time for this like petty politics stuff. But the mayor is there essentially for a reason. What is that reason?
So Mayor Hardin, he's worried about Anacreon and their new king, and that it's like right in the way of a trade route, an important trade route. So they're talking about how there's uncertainty in the strength of the empire, and like what it even means to be under the empire, and if it's as protected as maybe it once was or was perceived to be. And so in 2 weeks we hear an envoy, how's it pronounced? Envoy. An envoy from Anacreon is coming. And so we're kind of put into this corner of, is it life and death versus business as usual? And then what's going on with the Terminus City Journal that Mayor Hardin is supposedly watching over?
Yeah. I just want to also add that the mayor, he's specifically asking Perrenni to call an emergency meeting, right? They don't really say what that is, but we're assuming that's like with the Empire. To be like, hey, what's going on? Like, this is what's happening here. What are we supposed to do about that? And the guy's just like not wanting to get involved that much. Like that amount is still too low a standard for him to feel the Foundation can get involved. And then he at the end is like, okay, well, by the way, I'm also here to let you know that we're expecting an envoy 2 weeks from now from Anacreon, who we now think is, potentially hostile, right?
Yeah, it almost makes it seem like he was this prefect beforehand, and he's assumed the title of a king. Most times, whenever there's a change in leadership like that, usually pretty violent.
Like we don't know anything about what's going on there, right? Like we don't know what led to that ascendancy.
But at the end, we're kind of left with Perrenni and Hardin debating whether the opening of the vault, that's happening on the 50-year anniversary, if that is going to be a celebratory thing or if it is really only important to the board, which is the way Perrenni is painting it. What do you guys think at this point?
They're like introducing the concept of like culturally what's important, right? Like how does because that was Hardin asking for that, right? I'm not wrong there.
Yeah, and he was also kind of pushing it.
He's like, hey, our people need something to celebrate. That seems like a pretty cool, like it is the 50th year of why we even settled here, and even then, just to show how separate, Perrenni sees himself in the Foundation. They're like, no, that's just going to be for us. We'll tell you about it. We'll release like a statement or something
Of the vault thing?
of what happened in the vault, but we're not treating this like some political celebratory thing. So they're just like two different worlds happening right now.
Yeah. Did you guys have a favorite part of this chapter?
No, I was just trying to get past it, honestly. It was harder to get through, but I think it's just because I felt like I was reading it last
Introducing new
minute.
things.
Yeah, all these different names. Like, fuck, where are we at? Okay, 50 years from now. I was just getting the hang of,
You said you were going to get excited about the time jumping, though.
in a different way. I didn't know it was like, hey, guess what?
Nice
the next
call,
chapter
Marcus.
is like 50 years from now, and you're not gonna know any of the characters. So,
I think it's cool because it's like giving you.
well, you let me finish. It does get cool. The more I read, yeah, it was. This chapter, this chapter is kind of like just trying to figure everything out, right? I had to reread a lot of pages, and then at a certain point, I'm like, just get through it. All right, you're gonna figure it. It's all gonna make sense. And then chapter 2, it's like Anselm Hot Roderick. I'm like, damn, if that isn't
That's another new
if
person.
that isn't the sexiest name I've ever heard. And he goes hot, like because he apparently goes by hot. Did everyone read it by hot Hill? Do you guys know what I'm
I
talking
was
about?
saying hot. Hot Roderick.
That's the guy who came from
Hot Rod.
the different planet,
Yeah.
Anacreon, whatever he's called.
But one more thing in part 1 that I wanted to talk about was I liked
I'm trying to just go next one.
I liked Isaac Asimov. We start with Perenni as like our protagonist in this chapter, even though for the rest of the part we follow Hardin around kind of more so, like he's
Yeah.
more of the main character of this part. I thought
Yeah.
that was just like an interesting tool, that he used.
Hey, what do you think about Hardin
Yeah,
right
'cause-
now?
Sorry, go ahead.
What do you think about Hardin right now?
Well, he's cool. I think he's supposed to be the protagonist of this.
Okay, because at first I thought he was just like, I don't know what to think of him, but then I'm like, maybe this guy does have a point. But we'll get to that later.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So it's interesting because to your point, you don't know who the protagonist is. Like we're just reading for the first time, right?
Yeah.
But they start off that thing with him being like such a devoted, guy who's gonna set the foundation of knowledge for the galaxy, and he's just like so.
Who, Perenni?
Perenni.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
start the chapter that way, right? So in your mind, you're thinking like, okay, that's the guy that I'm rooting for.
Yeah, he's
right?
carrying on the
Obviously.
mission that we heard about in part
Yeah,
1.
he's like, I'm
The
not
whole
trying to worry
point
about the
is that
outside stuff.
The whole point that we start seeing is that they're too in their own bubbles to realize like the reality of the situation around them. So I think that almost kind of just, we as the audience are also like, wait, why? Like just because he's a scientist, we're like behind him, but we don't know, what else, like how he's contributing to the current situation is maybe less than what we would consider a hero right now, right? And that
Yeah.
continues to develop, and that's interesting because we just don't. Who's the protagonist here, right?
Yeah.
You would think it was the official scientist guys, but we don't know. But maybe I'm getting ahead of myself.
Yeah,
They're too
then
clouded in their
part
own-
2, maybe we find out that Robert's boy, Hot Roderick, is the real protagonist of it all. In part 2, I think we fast forward 2 weeks, right, and then we get the envoy from Anacreon, and he's greeted by Hardin, and really like the whole city of Terminus is kind of like, throwing some type of parade or something, I think, to celebrate his getting there.
Like, didn't you guys find that like kind of comedic? How absurd it was, like all the tradition and ritual of that. Like it seemed like Asimov was purposely writing that, like to show how like stupid it was. But maybe it's just me.
Yeah, there's because he puts like envoy extraordinary. He's like of noble blood, and then
It's when they exchange their pistols, right?
Oh,
That's
yeah,
just
right,
like such a.
I'm like, that's such a big dick energy move.
Yeah.
Well, no, they exchange their pistols in like a way to show that they're like peaceful to one another, right?
But with pistols, it means like, bro, like.
Huh.
like this is what I'm
Maybe.
working with.
I
Yeah.
just took that to be like that's like part of ceremony of like meeting another state government or something.
But like it seems at least with the envoy from Anacreon that he's maybe not taking it so seriously, or he's kind of looking at it like a joke, like we were looking at it, because Hardin notices a bulge on his shoulder,
Yeah.
which I guess
sure.
is kind of like a hint at like a weapon or something, right? What else could it be?
Yeah, you're right.
Mm-hmm.
There's some times where I just tell me what you're implying here, because
Yeah.
well,
It continues.
books,
we
right?
continue to kind of like realize like we're not actually supposed to really know. Like they keep making it more and more explicit at what's going on, right? It's like it's underneath the superficiality of everything. So what happens in that chapter?
So they go on an inspection tour through the Encyclopedia building, and it seems like Hot Roderick has kind of an ulterior motive that they are slowly figuring out.
So he keeps making remarks that's like big dick energy, like you said, right? That's like Like, what were some of those moves?
Yeah, there's one part where he's describing his own exploits as battalion head during the recent war between Anacreon and the neighboring newly proclaimed kingdom of Smyrna. So it also shows more dysfunction going on in, I guess, their galaxy, not only with the Anacreonians but the Smyrnos as well.
And he keeps going on, right? As if like to...
It's a whole back and forth, and you don't know who's like trying to like get the upper hand in their dialogue. It's like, what's this conversation? Where is it headed to? What's this guy's name? Hot? He's just like, we can pretty much like do whatever we want, but I'm visiting you so we can have a peaceful dialogue. Mm-hmm. And Hardin's just like, yo, dude, what are you talking about? We keep to ourselves. You don't have much going on here, except maybe our nuclear power.
Right.
And he says,
so talk about that.
All right. And again, I read. All right. What is
Hot want?
Hot wants to kind of infiltrate his army right into this world, into this planet.
Well, he brings it up by saying that there's been a situation on the periphery, which is I think where they're all at, and the status of your planet has become a trifle uncertain. And so he's slowly kind of threatening him a little bit, I think, or trying to put fear into his heart. And then, what's his name? Perenni? Perenni's kind of saying that the Foundation is what it always has been, and that everything's going to stay the same. It's state-supported. The Emperor's watching over. But then, they're talking about all these different kingdoms now. And,
So Perenni is they're basically disagreeing on the interpretation of the recent ascendancy of the new king, right? Like they both differ on what they think that means to Terminus as a territory, right? And so we start seeing little by little the Hot suggesting like actually we're a lot more powerful and independent than you maybe think we are.
Yeah, it's a little Godfather where he comes in and offers him some protection, an offer he can't refuse, really.
Yeah, so he's basically saying, look, what we'd like a military base because we don't think that the Galactic Empire is actually going to protect you anymore given the change in the international politics, or the galactic politics,
yeah,
right?
and he's saying Terminus can't defend itself.
And so he's saying like he's
like you have no choice.
He's like threatening, but he's saying we'll protect you. You just have to allow us to build a military base, and by the way, you're going to have to pay taxes for that.
Yeah.
And so that's essentially what like annexation is, right? That's what you do when you're a bigger government and you're wanting to take over.
And he talks about the strange world there on Terminus and how there's no peasants, no nobility, and then later on in the chapter he brings out how there's a lot of nobility on Anacreon that would like to add an addition to their estates.
So also saying like, plus you have so much like unused territory that we have a lot of people who could develop that, right? We have a lot of millionaires, whatever. And so they're again just disagreeing as to the interpretation of everything. Like Perenni, sorry. He's just like so naive as to the situation. He still thinks like they're giving him some formal visit, and he's just kind of showing them around the conflicts they got. But there's nothing to be worried about.
Yeah, because he feels like he's still under the protection of
the
big
Empire.
Government. Yeah, Empire. And then towards the end we get this part that I highlighted because I thought it was probably the most important part here. I'll go ahead and read it. The Anacreon no longer has a nuclear power economy. If they had, our friend would undoubtedly have realized that plutonium, except in ancient tradition, is not used in power plants, and therefore it follows that the rest of the periphery no longer has nuclear power either. Certainly Smyrna hasn't, or Anacreon wouldn't have won most of the battles in their recent war. Interesting, wouldn't you say? And so that's, what's his name? Hardin talking to Perenni after the envoy has left.
So what's happened throughout this whole chapter is Perenni is giving Hot Roderick the tour of everything, right? And Hot is asking him questions, and because there's in such disagreement about what constitutes reality, Perenni is just like answering all these questions as if they don't mean anything. And so Hardin's the one that picks up on that and starts asking his own questions, or starts answering questions of Hot in order to try to get more information with regard to what they're looking for, right? So he's trying to get out of hot, like, what the actual intentions are of this new power nearby. And so he's revealing things, one of those things being that they have nuclear power, which we know, though, I don't know if it's revealed in this chapter or the next.
I think it's
but
the next one.
It's a bluff, right? They don't have nearly as much as would be interesting for another power. But what they do find out with that is that they don't have nuclear power, which is kind of, I guess, like it just says something about how advanced their civilization is, right?
Or how times have changed.
Yeah.
Anything stick out on chapter 2 or part 2 that you guys want to get to before we move on?
I think it's just continuing to build again how out of the loop, or like how much in a bubble the Foundation is at this point.
And how much uncertainty there is outside of that bubble.
That's by the way, this whole time I'm thinking, like, guys, just stick to the encyclopedia. Don't worry about that outside noise.
You'd be one of the scientists.
That was my point. Is like initially you do think that, but it's because Hardin, you see his perspective, which we should maybe contextualize too. I think they do it in this chapter, but he's the mayor because essentially the Foundation exists, right? And now generations later, we have all these people who have populated the planet that are not explicitly working on the
50
Foundation.
years is a lot of time for people to be born.
So they literally just have like the city of Terminus, which is up to 1.2 million, I think they said.
And started off with 100,000.
Yeah, so they started off 100,000. They're now up to 1.2 million. So in the way that you would expect just like any civilization to form, you establish like a government for yourself, and that's why he's the mayor. So, after however long they've been there, 50 years, right? After initially getting there, 45 years, they now have a municipality that is now talking to the board of trustees, and like that's like just like a new power contention thing happening, right?
Yeah. All right, let's go
Okay,
to
chapter 3. Go ahead, Robert.
Oh, please.
Here,
Sorry, I feel like I
stuff down.
thought you started.
So Hardin is with Tomaz Suff, George Farah, London Crass, and Yate Fulham.
Oh, it's actually the best one. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, they're talking about how in 2 weeks Lord Darwin's going to get there. He's the Chancellor of the Empire, so he's kind of like, their own envoy, I guess. And then Hardin is kind of debating with the rest of the people there in the room, who are all on Pereni's board. They're calling Hardin a professional cynic, but we're getting his point of view, so it's almost like we're wondering if he's just being realistic about it. About the chances that Anacreon's going to come in and try to fuck some shit up, You guys have any thoughts on that?
Is this the chapter that starts with him saying, like, this was my first time with them again, but I feel like they've had more meetings without me?
Yeah, I think he...
Like, that's this, right? Or no?
Yeah.
So basically, yeah, that tells us how the board of trustees sees Hardin, right? Which is just like, this annoying guy wants to keep talking politics.
Part of the journal, which he owns 60% in, and he kind of controls the talking points.
So he owns the journal, even though...
Hardin, right?
Hardin owns
the mayor, yeah.
That city's journal.
Which started... Was that in this chapter? Or was early on? I don't know. I think that was the first part. In the second part,
that might have happened then.
So that automatically gave me pause to like his motives, or like his like I don't know, his authenticity or sincerity. Yeah. If he's like owns everything, then what if he's just doing everything for the wrong reasons? Yeah, but maybe he's just really, just took advantage of owning that, and
or the guy trying to get truth out of a murky situation, right?
Wait, what guy? What?
Hardin. So like you can look at journalists as just like trying to get the truth out there.
And he's asking, has anything concrete been done to meet the Anacreonic menace? And then people here, the people that are there in that room are, they say that it's near treasonous what he's talking about. So it's this perceived threat versus him being a treasonous, person.
So they're just like totally unaware of themselves. Like they have like no self-awareness, right? And like that continues to build in this chapter where like Hardin is like, hey, we have an actual situation here. Like what are we doing about that?
Yeah.
And they're just like, no.
Is this also when he's like talking about like, haven't you guys like, and tell me, stop me if I'm incorrect, but he's like, haven't you guys thought, like, you guys are writing an encyclopedia, you guys are just being stagnant instead of building upon it.
That's
Oh, yeah.
like in
That
a
was
few
like the
chapters
coolest
from
part.
now, but this is kind of the beginnings of that.
Well, he's starting to question, like, what is this all for?
Mm-hmm.
Like, aren't we trying to help, and what is this doing in the grand scheme of things?
Yeah, he calls the Empire a magic word at one point.
Yeah,
because they
so-
keep referring back to that and saying it's going to be all right because of the Empire.
So they mentioned for the first time like how potentially the opening of the vault is going to, like, that's going to have some message from Harry Seldon, right?
Yeah, well, it's funny because three of the guys and Hardin keep going back and forth, talking about the uncertainty in the Four Kingdoms and Periphery revolting and the Galactic Empire dying, and they're talking about whether or not to militarize to defend their home versus people that just want to stick to the mission. And then George Farah, out of nowhere, he speaks up, and the first time he's spoken up in the whole chapter.
First time I knew of this guy.
Yeah, and then basically he's just saying, guys, don't worry about it. Harry Seldon planned for this. I think that's where it comes in.
Yeah, he's like, we all know he was a genius, and obviously he did psychohistory, so don't we think that maybe the vault is going to be like our secret weapon, and he's like totally looking out for us, and we're going to have the answer. So that completely gives them a justification to just like not worry about the reality again, while Hardin is like, no, we need to actually think about what we're going to do.
He said he would certainly have managed to find a way to warn us of danger, and perhaps to point to a solution. The encyclopedia was very dear to his heart, you know. And I just like the way he's described as this guy that wasn't taking part in anything, and he's every bit as ponderous as his 300-pound body burst its vast way out. They're just this big fat dude who acts like he's got it all figured out, you know. And that
Wait, who were they talking about? Hardin?
Jorda Farah.
Oh,
George
okay,
Farah.
Yeah. And so this is the first time we see a critique by Hardin, which is the first time I even started thinking of them this way. But he's like, you guys don't even actually do science. You guys are just like the keepers of the science. Why aren't you guys actually forming new knowledge? Like, you're so concerned about whatever. And so they're like, we don't even think that we would be able to, I don't know exactly how this happened, but I have it in my notes. So they at some point suggest that they wouldn't themselves be able to decipher like any psychological message from Hardin or from Seldon.
Yeah, because we learned that none of them are psychologists. They're all scientists.
So one, there's no psychologist around. There was one initially, but he didn't train anyone, so like there's no one left. And then two, we also know that their day-to-day job is essentially keeping the science or like recording the science and not so much doing the science, right? So like they're just skeptical about whether they have the capacity even, which is like a big thing for us, I think, to read, because that's when you're like, oh shit, they can't. They're not actually that smart. They're just like historians.
And then we kind of learn a little bit about Hardin too, that although he's a politician now, he originally wanted to be a psychologist, and I think I don't know where it was, but like I think he went to school. Oh, here it goes. I wanted to be a psychological engineer, but we lacked the facilities, so I did the next best thing. I went into politics. It's practically the same thing. And so obviously I don't think their psychological engineer is like how we would think of a psychological engineer.
Yeah.
It's like one of the made up terms, I think, like psychohistorian. But in this world, it equates to him being a politician, a mayor of Terminus.
Just like navigating and kind of working the psychology of masses of people, right? Or just like knowing how people would react to things.
But it seems like on Terminus, any of those skills at all is pretty rare, which is surprising for a city founded by psychohistorians.
Yeah. Yeah.
Enter Lord Dorwin.
Yeah.
His biggest fear are ours.
So chapter 4.
I really loved Lord Doran. I thought he was such a breath of fresh air for like the entire book, because up to this point we haven't had like really any outright humor. But then Lord Doran comes in. I picture him real fat and
He
dressed
sounds
fancy.
like a baby.
He's doing drugs constantly throughout the entire chapter.
What do they call that?
Snuff.
Snuff.
He's doing snuff the entire chapter, and he starts off kind of just taking it, and then later on he like takes it seductively.
How did you guys picture that? Because honestly, I didn't have a good enough representation of like what it was they were doing.
What are you talking about?
But it was obviously like a drug sort of thing.
I would some kind of like cocaine or tobacco, mouth tobacco type of thing. Because
that snuff was just like a.
he took a sorrowful pinch of snuff towards the end.
Yeah, they're just like doing coke while.
Is that what happened with his R's, or did he already just have like
I
a
think
speech
he took
impediment?
so much snuff that his R's.
I think I was just saying like that's how
Exhibit
smooth
A,
he is.
a great achievement. This encyclopedia of Yos Hating, a feat indeed to rank. Wait, he said R. Typo. To rank with the most majestic accomplishments of all time.
Well, it says later on that he can pronounce his R's when he's like
excited
or something like that.
Yeah. From the little I have seen of the efficiency of your foundation. All right, now it sounds like it's getting.
And he says barbarous a lot. That it's barbarous, but we also hear that word in the last chapter that's what the society looks like outside of the Galactic Empire. It's barbarous, which is like less technologically advanced, I guess.
So we're introduced to Lord Dorwin, who again is the ambassador of the Empire, right? He's a guy that they're supposed to.
Besides just a fucking snuff. I don't know.
They're gonna get. They're hoping the Foundation and Terminus are hoping that in him will lie the answer to what the Empire is going to do about the situation, right?
But it's so interesting because Lord Doran, it seems like the last thing he wants to talk about is business throughout the entire time he's there.
He just honestly, the whole chapter is like I'm reading W's instead of R's throughout the whole. All these.
So what
pages.
are they doing? What are they actually doing?
They're trying to extract. They're trying. Oh, good question, Art. Because at the end, you're just like, oh, there's. Tell me if I'm correct. This is where Hardwin's like, bro, I just was trying to get out of him like what he like. I'm just trying. Actually, no. What was he trying to do? You're
I don't know where your thought was going.
He's trying to see like what the Empire, what power they actually do have, right? Wasn't that?
Well, they're trying to find like they're trying to go like, oh, you're finally here. Now we're gonna have an answer to what we're supposed to do, right?
Because the whole reason he's there is because they're feeling kind of insecure about everything going on.
So they apparently did call like an emergency meeting of some sort.
But Hardin's not buying this shit, right? Like Hardin's.
Well, he's there initially.
No, Hardin is the one that thinks that there's a danger, and then Perenni is the guy who's like saying it's business.
Right. But when Lord Dorwin's talking, so Hardwin's trying to realize the Empire's full of shit.
Yes,
that's what I'm saying.
So Hardwin is looking for them because he knows that he's supposed to be here, and he's like, oh, good, like I'm gonna have an answer to what to do now, right? So he's looking for them, and it's clear that they're hiding from him, essentially, right? And so he's like, oh, these like idiots are not getting to business. Like I need to go see what's going on.
Yeah.
So he finds them in a room, and they're essentially just like looking at like some sort of documentary and whatever technology they have at the time, some like projector-looking thing. But they're just like passing the time, having a good time, doing what they do, which is they're just nerds who like. It's almost like they're fanboy academic nerds, where they're not themselves like in the science doing the thing, but they're just like, oh, once we had Einstein and he was so great and he had this theory and it was such a great theory and I can tell you all about it because I've studied about it.
And then we see Doran get excited and Perenni's kind of like, oh wait, well, Hardin talks about how he's a psychologist by original intention and politician by final decision, and then Doran sees that as an opportunity to take snuff, and he talks about how he dabbles in archaeology, which isn't, I don't think, our archaeology, but it kind of related. And Perenni is like bragging for him. Doran is most thoroughly acquainted with this field, and then we kind of learn what that means in this future world where being acquainted is just reading a few books and comparing theories back and forth, and that's really all it takes.
So I think I may be going too far, and perhaps we can
go ahead.
Get this ship steered in the right way after this, but to me what it's basically showing is how like you can be so in a bubble that you think you're acting right or on the good virtues of what you deem good. In this case, like they're academics, so they think like knowledge is like the highest power, but you can be so in that world and like not realize like how much in a bubble you are. Like your whole like your entire social status depends on what they think of each other as like background and like knowing about archaeology, and they just use that as like a thing to be, flattered about, right?
Yeah.
Like they're just like they don't recognize what's going on in the real world. Almost like an academic now, maybe they can be discussing in philosophy departments or wherever, these things that don't have actually, like that's the critique of a lot of philosophy oftentimes, right? It's like you're too in your head with these theories that you don't realize the state of the world right now, right? And so you're choosing to be in this bubble and like you don't even realize it, that you're like in such like, 20 years spent working a PhD and now you're an academic professor, and so like your whole world revolves around this thing. And you're just like so.
And then what's the point of all that knowledge when you can't use it for the incoming dangers that might be around the corner. And then we learned too that Doran, he might only be there for a copy of this book, Lameth. And he's asking for a copy from Dr. Perenni. And so
Dr. Paween.
Yeah, and then so that's when Hardin kind of realizes like this is all like a waste of time.
So yeah, Hardin at the end is just like, wow, like this is where we're at right now. Like these idiots.
Hardin's probably so frustrated at this point. It's like, dude, you guys are fucking writing a book. Our planet's gonna burn down.
Yeah.
It's like, guys, just trust the process. It's like, okay.
And then Doran's asking about like what he wants to try to find out, like what his big mission is to figure out the origin of human history. He thinks he's gonna be the guy, and he starts listing off all these different solar systems. And then I was wondering if they were like real or fake. He talks about Alpha Centauri, which sounded familiar, and then Sol, and then 61
Sol,
Cygni.
maybe.
I looked it up, yeah. And he talks about the Arcturian system. And why I brought this up was because I started Googling them all, and I'm pretty sure we come from Sol. But then the Arcturian system, I typed that on Google, and it came up. The first thing was like a link on Amazon, and it was by this author, Wayne Brewer, who's a private investigator. And then he talks about alien reptiles. They're coming from Earth from this Arcturian system, and they're like helping people out that are in pain and all that. I just thought that was weird. And
I bet that's where like those conspiracy theories come from. Like they are actually based on not like a real understanding of everything, but like they at least like have reference points to like where they could come from or whatever.
Yeah.
Right? But it is interesting to think about that. Like that's kind of the journey we're on right now. And there's no reason why humanity, like we've had like formal science for a few hundred years, right? And so we've been thinking about the origin of the universe and our species, maybe. Like that's still like a thing we're thinking, like scientists are thinking about right now. But there's no reason why another 1,000 years shouldn't go by and like we just have to like as a species start all over again because of certain like political things that happen maybe. And we just lose, like they don't know where they came from, you know, they don't know where their species came from.
Because this is obviously the future, but
like we're lucky enough to know like we're coming from Earth because we've only been on Earth, but I mean, space travel is now just possible, so like another 1,000 years, and who's to say that events can't happen in such a way as to where whoever our inhabitants are don't know our, history.
Yeah, so that was a really fun chapter because of being introduced to Lord Darwin and thinking about, the history of humans and how that might look. Is there anything else that stuck out there?
I think I got everything on my notes.
Oh, well, they do talk about Lord Darwin brings up the indiscriminate use of nuclear power.
That's good.
And so he's just kind of scared of that, or not scared, dismissing it. While he's taking snuff that he thinks... Oh, and he also talks about his scientific method, which is far from our scientific method. We already went into that a little bit, but I did write that down.
Hardin must be so annoyed at this point. He's like, I live with a bunch of idiots.
Yeah, everyone's such a stupid idiot for being
like, you guys should be the smart ones. And I'm like over here fucking with a journal, owning a journal.
Okay, yeah. So there's a power plant meltdown on Gamma Andromeda, which leads to the restrictions of independent use of nukes. So there's that going on, kind of like in the political sphere of this galaxy. And then they also talk about the independent kingdoms losing nuclear capabilities, and then the treaties that they've signed as proof of their dependence on the Galactic Empire still.
Yeah, so they're just relying on like stuff that is again like kind of superficial if you think about it. Like, no, that can't happen because we got this document here that is a treaty, and we all know what treaties mean,
Basically, it sounds like everybody is so comfortable with how things have been for so long that they didn't think anything was ever going to change.
Right. It's like they won't attack us. Like, we got this document, But
is the next chapter the one where I think this might be my favorite one if this is the one it is, where Hardin's like, I have this down to a science, maybe not him, but like I've broken down exactly what was said or what was written.
So what happens?
Turns out broke down everything that the Empire, the Treaty Empire said, and it pretty much says we can't do shit. And it also broke down what was the other planet?
Trento?
No, the one who they just came from.
Anacreon?
Anacreon's pretty much like We broke that down and said that you guys are fucked if you don't.
So the process of breaking down. The process of breaking down was Hardin comes back and he, with the help of like a logician.
They call it symbolic logic.
Symbolic logic.
We need some of that, by the way, too.
That's an actual thing that you learn in logic. Like you can take like logic right now in school, and what you're taught is symbolic logic. It's just like it's like a vocabulary for logical arguments, right? Mm-hmm. It looks a lot like math, and it's related to math.
So he has this friend Hulk. What's his name? Muller Hulk of the Division of Logic. He analyzes all what's been going on, all that was said by Lord Darwin, all that was said by Anacreon.
So specifically the treaties, and then he records Lord Darwin. So like they transcribe everything and like translate that into symbolic logic so that they could. What he was trying to do is be like, look, Board of Trustees, this is literally what we're talking about, right? Like I had to break it down to the most logical components to be like, this is what we've been saying. And what do they say? What is that?
Well, they say empire protection, basically none. Nuclear obligations of the empire, power, none.
Powers of the empire over Anacron, none.
Total independent, empty assurances, for sure. It's all empty.
So the treaties between the new Anacron empire and then the old Galactic Empire basically recognize each other as independent states, right? Or polities. And so we know that much, which means that like the Empire actually recognizes them as a force. Like they weren't able to, through military pressure or whatever, be like, no, but we're bigger. And then so Lord Darwin ended up saying literally nothing symbolically. Like that turned into nothing. And then
the message from Anacron is roughly translated as, you give us what we want in a week or we take it by force.
Right. So he's like,
boom.
That's what they're saying, guys. What are we going to do about this? And so that's the first time where the board actually starts going, okay, you may be onto something here.
Yeah, because he also mentions how Anacron gets pissed off that Doran was even there, or like that's going on, that like they're trying to find protection. And Perenni, Yate Fulham, and Jode Farrar, who are all there talking to Hardin, talking about they're saying that he wants to like incite violence and he's trying to rile up the peoples of Terminus. And then you guys got anything?
So someone, I didn't write who did this, but someone again goes back to the Harry Seldon thing, right? So like in the midst of all that,
that's George Farrar again.
They're like, hey, actually, we forgot about Seldon. That's happening.
Yeah,
right?
he's got the answers. Yeah, we're good, dude. Don't worry about it.
He's going to step in here.
You want some snuff?
In a way that they vote to just wait and hope that there's like a Deus Ex Machina that saves them all.
Yeah. And again, Hardin's again giving this critique of like, you guys are worthless. Like you guys are not actually doing any original thinking.
He's like, even like, are we even trying here? Like, is anybody trying?
Yeah. So again, that's why that just like reads so comedically to me. Like I could see that be like an episode of Veep or something, where it's just like, man, like that's the whole point. Have you guys seen The Death of Stalin?
No.
That's on Netflix too. It's by the same like guy who writes Veep and In the Loop, I think is another one. But
I'm out of the loop.
He just makes fun of the fact that like our political class, like even the people who we have in charge of like all these institutions, they're just like winging it too, and they don't know at all what's going on.
Yeah, so Hardin's questioning everybody, like if they're wrong to rely on the past, if society is receding or if they're stagnating. And then he questions at the end, why are there no psychologists here?
Yeah.
And then he wonders, what's Harry Seldon's secret plan that he has going on?
So what do you guys think at this point? Like, where do you think, knowing at this point that there's still 2 chapters left?
I feel like Hardin's got a point, but my boy Seldon, you know, I'm still like, that guy.
That's what I was thinking. I was like, what has Seldon planned for any of this?
But I still think, okay, at this point before reading it, without spoiler alerting anything, I'm thinking Seldon still knows everything that's going on, whether it's good or bad, but I still think there's a purpose for all of this. And there's no way he's letting me down.
So I was doubting. I was like, I don't know that Harry Seldon knew any of this was going to happen, right? I was trying to think, like, how are they going to connect it back to Harry Seldon? Like, what was the whole point of the first part if, like, now we see that stuff is not going to plan at all?
But is it not going to plan, or is it going to plan? Like,
well, that's what we'll find out later. But at this point,
because I'm a believer in the first like part where he's like, "Oh yeah, he knew that you were going to get like we knew that you were going to get caught by the cops or whatever we followed.
Mm-hmm.
So I still think whether, you know, I don't know.
You still think like
I still think it's for the greater good.
you're still
whether or not
you're still on the scientist side and going
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
hey, someone's gonna save us.
yeah,
He's
because
painted like in such a
science
mythical
matters.
light in the beginning
Yeah.
that you feel like he's got to have something up his sleeve yet, because we really didn't get like enough, I think, to be satisfactory of Harry Seldon and what he means to the story.
He's probably. I mean, do you guys think that they're gonna talk about him anymore? I feel like that might be it.
Really?
You mean
Harry
after, like,
Seldon?
the parts in this one?
He's the main reason of this book.
But I don't think he. I think he served his purpose already.
I don't think he's going to be coming.
No,
around.
dude. Well, I mean, the next part they talk about how this is only the first crisis that we're going to experience, and then also, guys, while I was editing, I figured out that this was a trilogy that we're reading,
Yeah.
Oh.
and so this is just
I
part
kind of
one.
had a feeling this was like part of a series. I thought, yeah.
Yeah.
And so
This is part 1 though, right? We're not like on part 5.
there
like,
is no
because
way.
maybe
Harry
we
Seldon-
met Dorwin before.
Yeah. No, this is the first book.
Okay.
You're maybe. I hadn't taken that into consideration. I was kind of saying like, all of the Foundation is like. I also knew that it was trilogy, but I just thought it's gonna be different characters,
I hope-
different times
yeah.
all the time.
I hope-
But maybe
I
not.
hope-
It's within one book that there's different characters.
I hope by the end of this book that we have like a satisfactory ending, and like it could just end if we needed to, if we didn't read parts 2 and 3, you know.
Yeah.
But I guess we'll see.
Like we don't want to be held to like have to read.
Dot, dot,
Dude,
dot
if
at
there's
the
a
last
fucking
one.
cliffhanger at the end of this, like we
I'm
almost
in.
have to keep reading it, you know?
Yeah.
That'll be like next year. We'll go like we'll go
Well,
back to
what kind of
episode one.
cliffhanger, right? Like if it's a Mortal Kombat cliffhanger where it's like the dark cloud, he's like, oh, and then he says, "You're mine," and then what's his name says, "I don't think so." Like if that's we have to continue after that. But it's a
Yeah.
cliffhanger, like what's out there.
Well, I guess we'll see how we all feel about it by the end of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything else in chapter 5 that stuck out?
I think that's it. The last two are pretty short
really?
chapters, right? So,
Yeah, 6 is like one page, you're in and you're out, and it's kind of the
But
same.
it was a good. Actually, no, never mind.
No, what? Yeah.
It wasn't the. it was the last chapter. That
Yeah,
was the
6
interesting
is
part.
a really short chapter, only 1.5 pages. Basically, it's Mayor Harden, and we discover that he's risking a coup with Johan Lee. And he
Right.
says this is all happening after tomorrow.
So that's what's interesting too. Is like we're gonna see, like the start of revolution or whatever that might look like, right? Like if someone in that position, which, you know, obviously we're reading fiction, but if you were in that position, like you would have to think about what's the next political move, right?
Maybe now. Maybe now's the time for revolt and a coup.
Like I mean, if you're Harden or someone in a position where you're
Coup.
thinking about the group,
Coup de
like, what
etat.
do you do?
It's not pronounced coup. Chicken coup.
Just a couple.
Okay,
Yeah,
so-
I felt like he was obligated to write 7 chapters in parts, so that's why 6 is like one paragraph
Was the
done.
first part also 7?
I don't know. It's just-
I had told myself to turn off my phone. My bad.
Damn it, Marcus, we're an episode in already.
Yes.
Okay, so yeah,
This is Tommy to write notes during reading because
So-
I'm just like,
Oh,
Dude, it was so much easier writing notes.
we were talking about that, how I mentioned to Marcus earlier, how this is actually changing the way I think about like receiving information or storing information.
Mhm.
Like I haven't had to like write notes as I'm reading something ever, but this has been somewhat helpful.
I told Art,
Um,
and then also my wife before that.
My wife.
My wife, Sarah. I told her it goes from having listening to a lecture to having a conversation with the author. And I thought it was so brilliant that I've repeated it 3 times. Okay, chapter 7.
Okay, so chapter 6 again.
It's chapter 7 and
Just
final
to show
chapter.
that there was a coup happening, right? With, like, the plan was going to be to have the city act as its own political entity and, like, remove the power away. Like, they were just going to try to figure out a way to be like, okay, we're going to represent ourselves in these, like, negotiations or whatever we're going to go through.
Just say
Like,
coup.
it's not going to be the Foundation acting as our representatives, right? So that's what's going on.
Chapter 7.
I'm so glad we just skipped right to the vault opening.
You know, I was gonna say.
Hopefully that came out on audio. Otherwise, we look like we're crazy.
The thing I like about this book is like, oh, they're probably just gonna really stretch out for like the
Yeah.
next part, and it's like, hey, here's the vault. It's like, door opens.
And he does that like every chapter.
I'm reading it and not really thinking
But-
like it's really gonna be the vault, and it's like, and then Selvin comes out, and I'm like, ugh.
So the way I read that again was like super comedic, where I thought they were going through all this, or Asimov was like describing the room and everything, how everybody was walking in and it was dark and everybody was like seated in a certain way, and he went off to the side and they let him do that, which he was kind of surprised at. So I thought they were getting ready to actually like meet with the Acronian, like whatever, like their envoy to discuss.
Yeah.
Like that's what I thought was happening.
You thought that they were there for the
looked
vault
so
opening?
intense. And then when they got to the vault opening, I was like, oh my god, like of course they would.
It says everybody was only George Farrar was reasonably calm. Everybody else was like a little bit nervous or somber, watching to see what was going to happen with this vault opening, because I guess reality's starting to strike. They're watching a computer split off instance of time. There's a muon stream. A connection's made. The lights dim. And who do we see coming out in a wheelchair?
Harry Seldon, which John Locke. Thank you.
Like, can you just imagine like a group of scientists now like meeting, going like, oh my god, like Isaac Newton has a message for us, and like we don't know what we're gonna do.
Albert Einstein rips a hole through time, pokes his head in.
And so it's just ridiculous again at like the level of absurdity of all this. But it's hilarious.
It's not really Harry Seldon though.
It is.
It's like almost like a video recording or something.
It's like a projection.
Well, it is, right? It's like Iron Man or
or Star Wars.
Yeah, because he talks about recording this like in his time. He said, "Your grandparents left for Terminus a few months back in my time.
Yeah.
And since then, I have suffered a rather inconvenient paralysis." So that explains the
Marcus,
wheelchair.
tell us what it is that Harry Seldon has to tell the Foundation 45 years later.
Pretty much what we already know, actually. Yeah. Well, the one thing he does break is that after 50 years and foundational ignorance, the Encyclopedia is a fraud. That's right. His big mission, what this whole book is about up to this point, the Encyclopedia, is revealed to be a total fraud. All it was to get the 100,000 necessary to populate the planet for this other scheme that he's working on. And now everybody involved has no choice but to take on this more important project that he talks about. And he says it's inevitable.
So my understanding, yes, thank you, Marcus, that was, so his whole plan, it seems to me, correct me if I'm wrong, was to do what you said, set the population aside, and then purposely, like, leave them without psychological understanding, so that given this scenario that Harry Seldon created for them, would now have to evolve in a very specific way to like make certain decisions, right?
Yeah, it's like he had this plan
like
still.
He masterminded this whole thing, left them without psychology, so that they would have to just like develop their decision making for this particular scenario.
And at this point, you gotta bring in the question again of whether Harry Seldon or not is like
He's a good guy.
is a nice guy.
I was gonna say, you really gotta give it to him.
He wasted 50 years of these
like,
people's lives, just completely down the
But do you
drain.
think he wasted them?
It's almost like
or...
lobotomizing them, right? It's like that moral question or ethical
well,
question.
it's like he leaves them helpless with no tools to figure out what his plan is, like his bigger plan. Doesn't give them any room for maneuverability in case they need to change the plan. He's basically saying, like, you're stuck on this
He's
ride.
creating their fate for them, I guess.
Yeah.
Right?
And then he says that there's a series of crisis incoming. We get the 30,000 years, try to turn into 1,000 years of barbarism.
He still has the same mission in mind, though, right?
Yeah,
like,
I guess. I mean,
it's kind of like we know that this is going to happen, so we can't stop it from happening. But what I told you to do is not what's going to make it better. What you guys are doing in this instant, however, somehow will make it better.
Yeah.
Just
Go along with the plan, guys. And everyone's pissed. I mean, not pissed, but you tell everyone's
I
just
feel like you should
shocked.
be pissed, right? But also, how freeing would that feel? Like for Einstein, like this guy that you revered forever is like, hey, by the way, like you haven't really had free will, but now you do. And although I've planned everything for you to just make whatever decisions you need to make,
Can you
it's
imagine?
essentially going to be free will for you. You're going to be able to
Yeah.
go do whatever needs to be done.
Just imagine for a second, you're Dr. Perenni, you're in your room studying day after day, hour after hour, becoming an expert.
Reading the biographies.
Yes. And then your hero comes and tells you that he's basically wasted your entire life.
You see then
But also-
that you are faced by hard necessity and that action is forced on you. The nature of that action, that is, the solution to your dilemma, is of course obvious. Was anyone else like, And then he kept
I
on
don't know what you
reading.
just read right now.
Yeah, what was that? What was that?
What are you talking about? This was when he's like, listen, I know you guys are pissed, but trust me, I did this for a reason. Like, now you are faced with the next step. Now that you know this, you're faced that you have to take action now, and like that action that you have to take now is obvious. Right? I did read.
Well, yeah.
Okay.
But I mean,
Right,
it's still putting a lot on them to be like, okay, well, what are the right decisions to make?
Okay, good, right. So it's not obvious to anyone?
It's not obvious to the people that they're going to be able to, that they're going to know the right thing. But what's obvious is that Harry Seldon has said, or had planned in advance, like, that non-obviousness, like, them figuring that out is precisely what I'm planning to happen. And that's how the second...
Apparently it's also a new, he's wanting a new and greater empire, right?
So the whole point was for them to start the second galactic empire, which comes after a long period of barbarism in the galaxy, right? Which is what he predicted. And so that's... They're just left with that. They're like, oh shit, that's the journey we're on, actually.
Mm-hmm. And then at the end of the chapter, it's very sad. It says, the chairman's voice was firm but toneless. You were right, it seems. And then they talk about how they're gonna... Or he's talking to, what's his name? Hardin, telling him that he was right. And then they all leave. And then Hardin's by himself, and then he just says that Lee's men have already taken over. Lee is Johann Lee, who we met in the last chapter, who was with them planning the coup.
Yeah.
And so now the board has no power, according to Hardin, and this is the end of the part.
So Hardin, in his political maneuvering, has basically at the end he was just like, okay, well that was kind of for nothing, given that I've already moved on my plans.
Yeah, he already did it.
I'm taking over, so like even if they weren't with me, which they now are, it seems, I was still gonna move anyways and like figure out how to escape this.
Yeah, enjoy your free will, Perenni.
Hey, so what's their obvious is all hell action that they need to take?
What
that's
before
that's
that?
like the question that I wanted to ask you guys. What do you think that means?
Oh, okay.
I know what I think it means.
Who said
Again,
that? Harry?
No, yeah, Harry Seldon.
Read-
Hardin.
I'll say the
said
last
it.
paragraph.
Yeah, read it.
In fact, as Harry Seldon had said, and as Salvor Hardin had guessed since the day that Anselm Hot Roderick had first revealed to him Anacreon's lack of nuclear power, the solution to this first crisis was obvious. Obvious as all hell.
I think they're gonna use those nukes that they got. Nobody else has got those nukes.
Wait, Tom, so they
I
have
don't know,
nukes?
man. I guess
I thought they lied about
I
the
guess I don't
nukes.
know. I don't know where their nuclear power stands, because like there's been a lot of like subtle stuff said about it. So I don't know if it's like do they have a lot of nuclear energy? Do they not? That seems to be the big variable in terms of what they have that other Anacron does not have. So like that's an advantage just in the fact that they have capacity.
I think
But
the fact that they have Seldon is like Seldon's knowledge is a lot to work with, right?
So there is a lot, but it's like, I mean, what I was thinking was, are they going to have like a systematic way of like catching everyone up, given that everyone has like their own like very narrow depth of knowledge? Because they're all encyclopedists, right? Like putting together the information. Is there now? I mean, was that part of the plan that Seldon said? Like they're all doing this now. The whole population will have, or a large amount of them will have this knowledge, but it's just a matter of like getting that. I don't know. Like, can you universalize that, or like get everyone?
Well, Seldon talks about how he doesn't even care if a single volume gets released of the encyclopedia. Like to him, it's not really important.
So it's like inside
So it's like,
information.
I'm
for
glad
them.
that this knowledge exists within this group of people that is now going to become like
The head of the
next
new
second
galactic empire.
I really don't think the knowledge is important, or like the.
I think it is.
Yeah.
I think it does
Why
play a
else?
part.
Why would Harry Seldon implement such a thing?
Well,
If like the only thing was like to get people away, like you could have avoided all the encyclopedia.
I guess up to this point, we all believe that he still wants to turn the 30,000 years into 1,000 years
I still believe
of
that too.
barbarism, and that he has these
Don't let me
two.
down.
He has Terminus, and then another one, like a sister colony on the other side of the galaxy.
At the end of that chapter, I thought what I was reading was them going, and by the way, this isn't Terminus, this is the other one.
Yeah.
And I was like, whoa!
But see,
then
I'm,
I was
I'm
like,
wondering, like, what's going on that other one? Is it the
Yeah.
same? Did they
Is
get
it-
that message from Harry Seldon?
Right.
Do they have
What's
a Hardin?
their plan? Do we? I mean, does it even exist? We don't even know.
Wait, what? They're not on the same planet?
So remember the whole plan that Harry Seldon had was to, on one side of the galaxy,
Right.
have that thing, but then also have another one on the other edge, do
They
the
did.
exact same thing.
Oh, so that happened? I thought it
That
was
already
one
happened.
edge.
He said that it was part of the plan, but we don't know whether it happened.
Got it.
But it should be happening. If it were happening, it'd be happening right now.
So there's two different teams on opposite ends of the galaxy.
And then if we go back to the beginning of the book, we do get like a excerpt from Encyclopedia Galactica, so you figure at least one of the volumes comes out.
Oh, that's totally true. Like we've been reading little reference notes from the
But
Encyclopedia.
what if it's just for us? Like, you know,
Well,
a reader.
actually,
I guess it could be like we're the
You know
scientists.
what? I think we are going to read about Gal again because the first chapters said that he was the big. I think he's very important.
He
right?
wrote
Like,
it. He just wrote the.
So we know that if the encyclopedia is not out now and yet it exists at some point, then we know that Gal's going to continue to play.
No, he wrote the autobiography,
Oh,
the
that's right.
biography
You're right, you're
of Seldon.
You're right.
Who
But
did
this
we
is
cast as
50 years
Gal?
already. I would figure Gal's dead.
Yeah, or
He's
too old
gone.
to.
Yeah, you're right. Maybe.
And in part 3, we get the mayors, which maybe will be Hardin coming back because he is a mayor. Like,
What are the next two chapter parts?
we get the mayors,
3
and then the
four.
traders,
Mayors,
and then the
traders.
merchant princes.
Mayors, traders.
So we already know a mayor in this story.
So I think we're just going to go through like the cycle of like what a political revolution looks like, or like what, you know, like what's the cycle. So
Time out.
psychohistorians.
Did he
first.
write iRobot?
Yeah. We talked
Yeah,
about
we
that.
even
Remember,
talked
I had
about
like a Will Smith joke.
Can you say that again?
What was my joke?
No. Just good.
Fresh Prince.
You gotta give me a break here, right, guys? This is
okay.
conditioning.
So the mayors, psychohistorians predict the future. Encyclopedists write the past. The mayors, what are they gonna do? Just kind of
they're gonna
figure
like
it out.
organize the politics of or like watch out for everyone,
I guess they got to figure out how to defend.
like how to organize the political structure of their new.
Oh, I got a
world.
question for you guys. Do you think we're gonna get some violence coming up?
There better be some
I
action
think
as well.
what, the merchant princes.
I think the traders might have some.
Traders or the merchant princes?
Are we gonna see some nukes going off? Are we gonna see some
Nah.
characters dying?
I do remember the.
Are there any women in this novel?
No women exist in the future.
What's up with that, man?
I know.
This was 1951 though, so.
Yeah, that's what's up with it.
Yeah. It's probably
That's
like
what's up with it.
it's like me if I wrote a novel. Like, I can't write for women, and if it is, it's like, oh my gosh, Robert,
Robert,
you're so
no, but
hot, and you're smart too. Like, you can figure anything out. Thank you, love.
I think you would include women if you were to write a book now.
I would.
But Isaac Asimov? What was that?
Or anyone. I think.
Like you almost have to now, because otherwise there's like a whole army that will come after you.
Who?
Yeah,
Okay.
like,
Here's a
weird if
here's a
it-
good question. If it's like revamped, right, or they do make a HBO thing, who's the woman? Like, who do they switch out? Like one of the characters with a woman?
Perenni's gonna
the
be a
mayor
woman.
or Gal or Gal.
Hardin could be
Or-
a woman.
Why are you just like Perenni's gonna be a woman? Because he's annoying. Is that what you're saying, Marcus?
Yes.
He's been like the most annoying character.
No. To Hardin, dude, because he's been nagging the whole time. Like,
No, but
Oh, Drake too much.
I would say Hardin in a good way. Like I think Hardin's gonna make a good hero.
That's why- and
he
also
cares
a
about
woman.
The people in the world.
all right,
So,
so
he's gonna be a girl, but like in a
so
good
you
way,
cast
yeah.
Hardin as a woman. Who do you cast as woman Hardin? Mayor woman Hardin.
I would cast James Harden if it was a man.
I would cast what's that one? Who's the redhead who is in
In
Hendrix?
Interstellar.
Mad
Yeah.
Men.
What's her name? Interstellar. Also,
And other
that war
things.
movie.
Amy Adams.
no
No.
Let's do Amy Adams.
Jessica
She's good.
Chastain.
Jessica Chastain,
No, get her out.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
Amy Adams or James Harden.
Megan Fox. Okay, well, all right, maybe.
That was the last chapter, right? We
Yeah, that
covered
was
the
it.
last chapter.
Any parting words?
Yeah.
What do we? Well, I guess that's what we're doing. Right?
I'll try better
What's
next
gonna
time.
happen?
Well,
You guys prepared to read the longest part?
holy
Yeah.
smokes!
It's only 60 pages. We've been reading 40-page parts.
Yeah, you're right. We could do it.
So
I'll
it's only
definitely
20
not
more
wait
pages.
until the last minute.
No
Yeah,
waiting
dude.
until the last
I
minute.
thought my brain was gonna be like so sharp, and I'm like, as you guys are looking over your notes, I'm reading paragraphs. Like, oh, that's what happened after all.
Yeah. So, how do we think we did? Episode 2. Any progress? What do you guys?
Episode 2 in the
I
books.
liked our.
I got a lot drunker in this episode, which
I've only had one beer. So
I'll let you guys do a lot of the talking and explaining as I was nodding my head. But
Maybe you can steal the episode here at the end.
all right.
Any?
Yeah, I'll read a whole paragraph from Darwin.
yeah, it was basically that voice for everything. Just like some super snarky guys.
I like
don't
Lord
realize how pompous they sound.
I hope we see Lord Darwin come back and maybe controversial. I kind of want to see him get killed or something.
do you guys watch Frasier by chance? This was almost that. It's like that taken to the extreme. If you just got these two, like Crane brothers, watch Frasier, everyone. Frasier's great.
Do not watch
Who
Frasier.
who directs Foundation in a movie?
I would want it to be very good.
Oh,
Like someone, but also, I don't know, because I saw like the comedy thing. I think you guys should watch The Death of Stalin.
You know, you bring up the comedy a lot, but
I feel like
I'm not
I
laughing.
don't
Watch
know-
do this.
I don't know if there's like a whole lot of comedy besides Lord Darwin.
I can just picture Art
But
reading.
It's like that same characteristic of Lord Darwin. Everyone in the Foundation has that to a degree,
You know who
right?
would
So
be
it's
good?
just like putting heart in there, going, "Whoa, what are we gonna do about saving the world?"
Yeah.
and all these people just.
He's like the only smart guy, like, and a bunch of idiots that are. I mean, you would assume that they're all smart.
Yeah.
You know who would be good? Would be the Coen brothers. They kind of
That
always
would be
have this
cool,
type
yeah.
of feeling.
right.
That would be good.
Yeah,
Well,
I'd see it on Netflix.
episode 2 in the books. That was a book. What's it called?
It's called
Isaac
Foundation.
Asimov, Foundation.
Get it at your local bookstore.
And part 3 will.
Alright, it was-
Next podcast, we'll be reading the entirety of part 3. The Mares.
The Mayors.
Once
Cool.
again,
Put it
I'm
in.
Marcus Molina.
I'm Robert Martinez.
Arturo.
Multiple.
name.
Google.
Yeah. Cool.
Bye.
All right. Done.